First item is Air Service Development Update. Ms. Grafton.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Here to provide a little bit of an update on the Air Service Development. We began, obviously, our attempt to secure air service on January 29th when we retained the Boyd Group to assist us with developing air service team meeting that occurred in February. Excuse me. And then they were able to arrange for a meeting for us to attend in Dallas with an interested air carrier in April. And we've been reaching out to the public and the community and regionally to seek support for a small community air service development grant. That grant it was released to accept proposals on June 24th, and the closing date is July 26th. Of course, we're looking also for our long-term sustainability efforts. And the Small Community Air Service Development Grant was announced. The RFP was announced June 24th. On July 8th, we received our draft proposal package from our consultants, and we are in the process of finalizing the proposal package. We expect to file the grant application tomorrow, hopefully, with the deadline of Friday.
Tomorrow.
Talk a little bit about some of the letters of support that we've received. Over 64 letters of support, totaling, excuse me, $62,700 in revenue guarantees, minimum revenue guarantees, to assist the airline to help offset any risk in starting in an air service in a new community. Over $200,000 of in-kind services. Those range anywhere from reduced rates, advertising, free advertising, terminal space, reduced rate fuels, reduced rate mechanical services, free and reduced rate crew quarters, and of the likes like that. It's been a significant outpouring of in-kind that's been offered. We've also had ticket purchase guarantees, commitments from people, over $126,000 to date. And this kind of gives you a little bit of an overview of kind of the snapshot that we present to the airlines in all the different positive aspects of why you should operate in Del Rio and where we're at in trying to secure this grant award. Of course, we have the $62,700 in minimum revenue guarantees, $126,368 in-kind travel pledges, $200,448 in-kind services. And then we go a little bit into the items that are subject for some modification. They may or may not be 100% factual, so we don't count them as actual commitments, but they are items that really need to be addressed and brought before the airline because they recognize these items. Over $400,000 of historical business travel, and that's only been presented from 4 companies, over $400,000. And that ranges anywhere from 10 to 12 months of historical travel that they've had. And they foresee that their travel will remain the same or increase.
When you figure the ticket sales in terms of pledge, how is that rate calculated if you don't know where you're flying, or how's that generated?
Good question. What we do is we take and calculate a trip from Beaumont to the destination, a round trip ticket. And the reason we do that is because Beaumont is about the same flight stage length as Del Rio is to Dallas-Fort Worth.
Okay.
And so the cost, the operational cost should be similar. Although we expect the Del Rio tickets to be possibly $20 to $60 more, depending on where you're heading to, because Beaumont's a larger community. And so that's how we've estimated all of these. If they have specified, some have specified particular flights, some have specified dollars, $2,500 in airfare for the year. And that makes it easier. And so that's how we've based the calculations. As well for the historical business air travel and the survey that we've had going, we've had a tremendous response to our survey online, which is over $500,000 estimated based on destinations. And there's 79 surveys that I was not able to estimate with over 600 trips because they were too vague. They would say, well, I go to Europe twice a year, or...
And those were the online surveys?
The online surveys, yes. And then, of course, we're requesting the DOT provide us with a grant award of $500,000 with a city matching of $100,000. Something else that's kind of unique about Del Rio, and we had discussed this or brought this to their attention at the April meeting, that we are considered a rural airport under the Taxpayers Relief Act of, I think it's 1997. It saves basically the airline or the passenger $3.90 in taxes for each leg that they fly in or out of Del Rio. If we were to operate a 50-seat jet at 70% load twice a day, that would equate to almost $200,000 of savings in taxes for the airline. And we brought that we sent them the information on that, and also other airports such as San Angelo, which they operate out of, and many other airports are on that list. It could save them an incredible amount of money, or create more revenue for them because it would be less taxes they would have to pay. So.
Is there? Do you have any numbers in terms of lost revenue on missed opportunity with regard to not charging for your parking fees? Do we have an idea of how long vehicles typically stay at our airport? Because we have a free parking, and do other airlines, smaller airports, also have the free parking as well? Or
yes, other airports actually allow free parking because it helps offset some of the cost for paying for the higher ticket price. In fact, some of the surveys that we've received, actually the majority of the surveys that we've received comment on the free parking, save the gas, save the long trip. Those are the big things, and so it ends up balancing financially. We do have a situation where we don't have for pay parking because we have an agreement that would allow another individual to develop that free parking, where we would have only a portion of the funds received on that. And so it does assist offsetting the cost. And the free parking was, everybody spoke of the free parking on the surveys. I have about 10 samples of some of the comments that people have made on these surveys. 282 online surveys, and that was as of last Friday. We've had more come in. I was able to estimate 216 of them for over $500,000, representing 464 trips altogether on those estimated ones. So the community is involved. They're anxious, and these surveys and some of the comments will be relayed to the airline as well. So we look at the sustainability. If we do receive a small community air service development grant, we want to implement our marketing plan and move forward with that and get things kind of revved up, not only locally but regionally. We have many passengers that utilize the airport from Eagle Pass, and before the air service terminated, Uvalde passengers were starting to come into Del Rio. And some of the survey responses are from Uvalde. Why would I travel through all the heavy traffic and pay for parking in San Antonio when I can come to Del Rio instead, and faster security lines and so forth? Also, we're kind of in the process of trying to develop a Southwest Texas Air Service Consortium with all of the communities in the region, trying to select or have the community recommend to one or two individuals to represent the community, you know, perhaps leadership and a business person, and to where we can meet at least once a year, if not twice a year, at different cities, and talk about how the air service is proceeding if we do secure air service, and try to request their assistance in promoting the air service here as a regional airport for them. Something that the mayor had brought up is that we should consider offering bus service from some of the more frequent users to bus into the airport. I know we had some discussions, and the mayor had some discussions about possibly doing some busing, Eagle Pass busing, and look into those possibilities. The Kickapoo Casino had indicated they would pay a per head rate to the city if we bussed, and they'd pay a healthy per rate. So that's a possibility. Also, continue with our local, regional, and international support. It's been fantastic throughout this process, and continue with the long-term marketing plan. It's very, very important to focus and commit to your long-term marketing plan. And these are the frequently asked questions. Most frequently asked questions is the timeline. What are we looking at? Of course, our deadline for the grant application is July 26th. We expect by the end of September to hear something back. It takes 6 to 8 weeks, whether we receive a grant or not. A person could begin negotiations, and we've actually been asked that as soon as we hear if we have received a grant, to send all of our supporting information immediately. And so basically the very next day after we hear the news, if we receive the grant, we'll start sending information to the airline.
How many times have we received the grant years previous?
We have received the grant once.
Oh, once. 05
in 2005.
Is that 2004, 2005 with $300,000 grant?
Yes.
And city matched 160,000?
106.
106.
106. Now the total project cost was more, and on the proposal that's being presented, our total project cost includes these ticket purchase the in-kind guarantees and such. Those are noted in there. So it's a total project cost is a lot more because people have committed to those. So implementation time for air service, if all the negotiations go well, we receive a grant, the negotiations go well. It's really dependent on if the air carrier has available equipment and personnel. Basically, they're going into a lot of communities. They have limited amount of aircraft and air crews. I would not expect anything, and this is just me personally, the airlines typically do not start service in the winter. Unless they were to pull a flight from another airport that wasn't doing well, I don't think that we could expect anything before February at the earliest. And that's if they have the resources available. In the meantime, TSA is going to, some of them have selected to go on a second deployment. And then when they return from that, they'll be reassigned. TSA has held open several positions at the San Antonio airport for our people that are employed here and want to stay here, so that as soon as Del Rio opens, they have immediate priority back here, so they can come back home. Or they can choose to move their family there if that's what their choice is, obviously. And TSA will take care of that. Our airline employees, they're still looking forward to coming back to work, the predominant portion of them. So we would be well positioned to start service.
And for those individuals, were they reassigned to, like, to Houston, or where were they? Did they stay with the company, or?
Most of they were offered other positions, but they were part-time positions and they weren't in Del Rio. And these people have roots here in Del Rio and didn't want to leave. We did have our supervisor out there. He did move to San Angelo. He said he would be happy to move back depending on, the timing, because you can only move every so often. Or he would be happy to operate both Del Rio and San Angelo, as a supervisor and have the lead agent here. But they've chose not to relocate except for the supervisor. So, is there any other questions?
I have a few, Ms. Grafton.
Yes.
Obviously, I understand, and I think we all see the importance of the airport and what it would do for Del Rio. But looking over some history, between 2004 to date, we're looking at total investment of almost $800,000 from back then to now. What you just showed is $489,000 in 1 year. That's half what took 10 years. Now, those guarantees that you put up there, are they guarantees for the life of 3, 4, 5 years? Just 1 year? What are we looking at when they say a guarantee of $489,000? And are those people willing to commit for long-term guarantees to try to help the airport stay here? Because that airport, it's an ongoing investment. And with the economy the way it stands now, I seriously doubt all those guarantees being able to do it for 5-10 years from now. I mean, it's quite a bit of an investment. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about the grant, it's a $500,000 grant. City matching $100,000. I don't think we have $100,000 to invest. And or I might be mistaken. How many years is it going to be $100,000? Or within a 5-year? Within 5 years, we're going to match a total of $100,000, or can you elaborate?
Yes. The term for the contract would be a 2-year period. The commitment would be spread out over a 2-year period. In other words, the $100,000 invested would be spread out over the 2-year contract period. As
So
well,
$50,000.
now there
that we have
are
to come up with to match that $500,000. I mean, it's
Correct.
a great.
Correct.
Of course, they're gonna give us 5. We're gonna commit 100. Great.
Correct.
Just that today's economy, $50,000. We don't make $150,000 because obviously we're gonna have to take away from somewhere to give that money. Which, like I said, it's kind of tough in today's economy. And essentially, what you're talking about is subsidizing at some point this airline or this new airline that's coming.
There would be, yes, there would
right?
be initial
obviously,
subsidies required if we did not meet the passenger load,
and
yes.
when we got the grant back in 2004, it was, we got $300,000, we matched, and we had to match, but there was a load factor, and if we ever met that load factor, we didn't have to match it. Am I correct?
Correct.
85%? What was the size of plane back then that we had to meet the load factor?
It was the Saab. It was the
How many
30,
passengers?
39,
34.
30,
34.
34,
34?
the smaller Saab.
What's 85% of 34?
25.
25?
I think it was
we never met
22.
it. We never met it.
No,
That's
Right?
prop service also.
So now, of course, it's prop service, but now we're looking at a bigger plane, 10 years down the road, a little bit more expensive, and we have to do a load factor of 70 on a 50-passenger plane.
Well, we don't know that yet. We haven't began negotiations with the airlines, so we don't know what the negotiated factor will be. And what a lot of it plays in part to the ticket costs as well. Basically, to operate the aircraft, for instance, it's estimated around $5,000 a trip. So they need to be able to generate that amount of income. And based upon the flights that are taken, depending a portion, all of the Del Rio to Dallas would be applied, and then a portion for any destination thereafter. Say you depart Dallas and go to Frankfurt. A portion of that ticket sale would go towards the operational cost. And so there's a lot of negotiations as far as that is concerned that still yet have to occur for the operational performance.
But in terms of those load factors, even in 05, I mean, the service was inaugurated in March of 05. Within 3 months, the third flight was added. And so, I mean, that also skewed a little bit of the numbers in terms of the load factor. I mean, at two flights a day, or even 3, what would be in your professional opinion, where were we at before? Were we meeting that load factor? I mean, because most flights that I know was on were full. I mean, so I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not certain with 2 flights we'd have a problem, would we?
I don't believe that we would in the long term. We've got a huge amount of, basically, I don't believe we would have a problem with 2 flights a day, perhaps 3. I do believe that eventually we could reach load factor requirements of 3 in the long term. Dallas-Fort Worth, looking at the different top destinations that we fly to, Dallas-Fort Worth better serves our community. They have a lot more available connecting flights. They have over 900 direct destinations out of DFW, whereas Houston had a little over 300. So those tight turns and people not being able to schedule out of Del Rio because there wasn't enough connecting flights. And in mention to your investment of $50,000 per year over the next 2 years for this effort, the city did fund the marketing fund over $50,000 for several years. And that is what the investment is meant for, $100,000 towards marketing. And to have a healthy marketing fund, you really need a minimum of about $30,000, per year.
And it was much more in 05 than 100,000. It was a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, we took out our
was
162,000, I believe.
Yeah, for marketing.
That's quite a bit.
Over a 3-year.
And like I said, back then, the market and the city was stronger than what it is now.
Yeah.
I just feel that, I mean, of course, great if we would get it, but, I think we can use any amount of money somewhere else, something that's more useful within the city than to cater the small percentage that will be flying.
Well,
that's just my personal opinion, because that's coming from the community and from the phone calls I've been getting. Their concerns about subsidizing the airline. It's like it's like putting money into a machine that's really not giving you a return anytime soon, and you're going to have to keep putting in there to see a return within maybe 5-10 years from now.
Well, your investment is in your economic growth.
Yeah,
when
I
you
don't
have
see how
any
we
type
can
of
afford not to
transportation.
invest the money.
Yeah, if
Any
you will,
type.
why don't you back up to about that second slide you had where you had your, I want to see the revenue guarantee. Back it up a little bit. That one. In order for a community to grow, we can stay Del Rio forever. Right now, we don't even have bus service. We're isolated. But in order for a community to grow, there has to be a certain amount of investment done. Now, the airport, we're talking about the airline service. That is to take passengers from point A to point B. But the airport is more than that. Right now, there's cargo coming in. We're in the process of working with FedEx to get cargo in. There's a process. We're in the middle of negotiations to have a regional warehouse for FedEx, the creation of jobs, the creation of the movement of products in and out of Del Rio. That money for the expansion of the airport, of the runways, of the taxiways, That's dependent upon the FAA funding at 90% federal, 10% local. That is dependent upon the ridership factor of the airline. So it all comes together. So right now, the major difference between what we had in the past and what we're looking at, what we experienced a little bit, is we're looking at jet service. Jet service is considerably different than what we did in the past with, and I don't know, Mike is our pilot here, the propeller
Turboprop.
type. The propeller type is not reliable. If the wind's blowing, they don't take off. If there's water, they don't land, they circle, they go somewhere else. The business community and your travelers, you cannot afford to have a system that's not reliable. So that's why people that normally have to drive to San Antonio to get a plane to go to Houston, to go to Dallas. Look at the expense. You have to take off the day before to drive to San Antonio, park your car, pay it, most likely spend the night, get on the plane, come back and do it in reverse. But if we're going to grow as a community, we got to push for jet service. Look at the difference between the propeller type and those 4 months, 5 months, and the increase of ridership when we had more reliable services. I've been in contact with Laughlin Air Force Base and the amount of traveling, the Border Patrol and the amount of traveling, the Maquiladora Association, in addition to the everyday passengers. You have a connection. You cannot afford a propeller type that might get you, it might not get you there. We're looking at one flight to Dallas. Look at our ridership for the last 4 months when we had jet service with 2 flights per day. If we go 1 flight per day, we will do the 75-80% capacity of a 55 passenger on 1 flight per day to Dallas that has more connections. We are going to submit an application tomorrow. We're going to get there early. If we're successful in getting that $500,000, 400 plus of it will be used at the revenue guarantee. Right now, we have local donations of money, $62,700. If we get if we add grant money around 450 or so, we're almost there. What we need to do is get our application in, work on it to hopefully it's successful, have the seat money for the revenue guarantee. I don't see a problem on the ridership with 1 flight to Dallas on a reliable airline. Where I see a problem is initially. We haven't had air service in the last 4 months. So to me, that revenue guarantee is the bottom line. That's what your airlines are looking for. In the first few months, they'll dip in to get their quota, to get their minimum requirement from that account. Once we start going, it will build up. Then we get our 10,000 ridership off. We qualify for $1 million of airport improvements on an annual basis, and you see it start growing. But I visited with the Maquila Association. One of the best selling points is they're not flying from Del Rio to Dallas. They're going to Germany. They're going to Sweden. They're going all over the world. But they cannot afford a propeller system that might not get them there on their connecting flight at Dallas. So the jet service is extremely important. We have 64 letters of support from the Middle Rio Grande, the 9-county region, to our Congressman Gallego, to our senators. Everyone is supporting our successful grant application so that we can build up the revenue guarantee. Without that revenue guarantee, we don't have much leverage going in to a major airline and says, come do business with us. I am confident, based on the ridership of the jet service, we will fill up one flight per day. And then that brings in the revenue. But, you know, I have a letter from United States Senate, our U.S. Senator John Cornyn. Dear Mayor Fernandez, thank you for contacting me regarding the proposal submitted by the Del Rio International Airport to the Department of Transportation for a Small Community Air Service Development Program grant. I understand the importance of this project to the city of Del Rio and the airport and the positive impact it will have in promoting advertising regional air service. Therefore, I have contacted the appropriate personnel at the Department of Transportation and asked them to give full consideration to the many advantages of this application. When I receive more information from the agency, I will contact you again. Congressman Gallego wants to know the day we submit it so they can start tracking it down. But the key is revenue guarantee. Now, there are 40,000 people in Del Rio. We're asking, we need air service, and if air service is important to our community, then the business community has got to step forward. The business community is going to have to dip in, write out a check. And Mr. City Manager, I think we need to start getting a bank account or somewhere where people can donate to that account. The business community of Del Rio needs to step forward. Citizens of Del Rio need to step forward. I get complaints. We don't have bus service. We don't have airline service. Where do we go from here? Well, we're trying. If we're successful with that grant application, we're going to fill up that revenue guarantee, and then we need to supplement it with us, ourselves, our businesses, or us individually. If every citizen in Del Rio would give $10, $20, we'd fill it up. Then the airline will listen to us, because for the startup, they'll use some of that. The guarantee is once they get back and they don't need to use that revenue, any unused funds will go back in proportion to the citizens that donated. So I'm asking today, the business community step forward. Individual citizens, we need an airline in our community. Step forward. Here's my check for this meeting. Not much. I don't get paid much. This is my check for this meeting. I donated to that fund. And I'm asking every citizen of Del Rio to give us $10, $20, so that we can build up that revenue guarantee and have a better opportunity of having air service in our community. We will not grow as a community without an airline and an airport. We're going to be a small border town forever and ever. The commercial implication of an international airport along the border, there's nothing between Laredo and El Paso but Del Rio. Ours is an international airport. If you keep up with what has been going on, there are more flights from Mexico to San Antonio than ever before, because this is a global economy. But the Rio citizens, we need to put our best foot forward when we go and do final negotiations with that major airline. I want to see that general guarantee, revenue guarantee fund from $62,700 to at minimum $400,000. And we can do it with the business community support and every citizen's support.
Well, how aggressive have we been on those efforts to increase that number or to get to that number?
It was a little confusing, Councilman, because we were working two steps. We were working to get the 200 in-kind. We were getting the ticket purchase guarantee. We were doing two things. We were trying to convince the powers that be to let us have the grant. So we wanted to show we had a commitment of utilization and some in-kind and ticket purchases. We're trying to convince the people to give us, the Department of Transportation to give us $500,000. That, I think we did an outstanding job. I compliment the city manager and his staff and everyone that has worked on it. Sylvia Owens with the Economic Development Committee. I compliment y'all. I think we have a very solid application. Once we finish that, the 64 letters of support, once we have that, get our application in, that's the first step. Phase 2 is the revenue guarantee. Let's build up the revenue guarantee. If we're successful, we'll have at minimum 400,000, and then we build up this. Then we go back to Dallas and negotiate with some money and say, if it takes us a month or 2 months or 3 months to get us going, we got the money. We're confident based on the ridership of what we experienced those 4 months of jet service with 2 flights, we can fill one up. But citizens, we need help.
Mayor, I have a few comments myself, and to address Mr. Contreras there. I don't see how we can afford not to support the airline. If we want jobs in Del Rio, we need airline service. And I'm with you, Mayor. I already committed money myself, so I'm on board. Another thing I'd like to comment on is that I know we've compared ourselves a little bit to the situation in Beaumont, but I think we have a more compelling case because Beaumont's only an hour away from Houston, and people can drive an hour to catch a plane in Houston. Nobody's going to drive, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but people would much rather take a local flight than drive 3 hours. So I think that's a big thing in our favor.
That is, absolutely.
And I have another question for you, Ms. Grafton. Right now, we're getting TxDOT funding for the airport, correct? Or
No, we're still getting FAA.
but it's a much. What's the amount now?
For this grant year, it'll be $150,000.
Right.
The following will be should be, if it's appropriated, $1 million. Actually, a little over $1 million.
Yeah,
Then
we would
back
get
to
$1 million
150.
if we hit 1,000 passengers
Right.
a year.
10.
So I mean, right there, that's $850,000 that we would recoup.
Exactly.
So it's pretty much a no-brainer in my mind.
Well, and you mentioned that just to take a snapshot of the airport financials. When the airline left, we estimate that we lost $140,000 worth of revenue at the airport to the airport fund. It had an impact, a direct economic impact with the TSA employees, the airline employees, of job loss of over $4 million, almost $5 million. And when you look at the other entities on the airport, it was about a $15 million economic impact when they walked out the door. That was immediate annual impact. And so the $50,000 per year for marketing is it's marketing money, so you're getting something in return for
But
it.
we're already losing revenue because most of that in kind comes from the city. Does it not? That
No,
crew quarters, free discounted services and terminal fees, where does that come from?
the marketing, crew quarters, and free and discounted services are being offered by citizens and businesses. The terminal, as it was previously, was offered for operationally at no cost for the airline. That encourages them to come in and operate at the airport. That's about $25,000. If we were able to rent out based upon the terminal rental fees per
So that's
square
lost
foot,
revenue basic for the airport.
the $25,000. But
Okay.
without the airline, we've lost $140,000 in revenue without the airline, because we've lost fuel flow fees, we've lost passenger facility charge fees, we've lost custodial and utility sharing costs from TSA. There's a lot, Leo reimbursement fees. There's a lot that we're losing, a lot more that we're losing than the investment that we make in it. We're more than double in loss.
But I thought we were told we were there on the revenue side. I mean, this airline that left didn't leave because we didn't have the passengers, is what we were told. I mean, the revenue was there, right?
Well, we were not quite meeting the threshold. A new CEO came in and took over, as was the arrangement for the combined merged company, Continental United. The United CEO ran the company for the first year, and then the Continental CEO came in. And after about 2 months of evaluating the company, he decided to take the company in a different direction, less focus on the real rural airports. And we just had not quite met that threshold. The planners with United believed that given another 6 months, we would have met the load factor that they were, our goal load factor, but we were only off by about 4 passengers.
Well,
what was
on
the
average.
rate of increase during that jet service time?
It was amazing. Matter of fact, it even started because the jet service didn't start full up until the 1st of July. They did half flights beginning mid-June, but the noise level about the jet service, the announcement in May, caused an increase every month consistently of 35 to 65% increase from the previous year in loads. So we were not only recapturing the approximate 40% loss, we were exceeding that. And with just word of mouth primarily, and digital, focus on digital media. And
well, with regard to that in-kind
electronic
donation,
media.
I text our CEO. I represent 8 radio stations in the region, and we're willing to make a sizable contribution to the in-kind effort as well. So I can relay to you that dollar amount tomorrow.
Mayor,
that would be great. And we have wonderful letters of commitment, as the mayor mentioned, from Congressman Gallegos. We have a letter of support for our grant from American Airlines. We have a letter of support from them. We have a letter of support from Tarrant County Commissioner Precinct 3, who happens to be the county commissioner over half of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, including all of the American Airlines training and headquarter buildings. He's the county commissioner. He just sent a letter today. We received it today. He has people in Dallas that want to do business here. They have business here. We've got businesses that are saying, without the airline, we cannot consider expanding.
Well, and again, let me get this in here because I think we might be losing focus here. Not completely, but I think again to remember that this is an economic development tool, and if we get this taken out of our abilities to a tool to push economic development, that's going to be devastating. I can tell you right now, I was taking notes and reminding myself that, a lot of the maquila associations, there's 1,100 employees that work in the maquilas that live on this side. And so when we talk about airport and where it may not affect the non-airport users, it actually does. Because when we start looking, and you're gonna get the budget today, you're gonna see how assessed values are creeping up by just minuscule numbers. This translates into Acuña being a viable opportunity, an option for people or companies to invest in instead of going to China. So these 1,100 folks that are living on this side are probably paying that property tax, are probably using our services. So that actually translates into revenue for us, so that we can then pay streets, pay police department, work on our parks. So there is actually an effect to everyone involved in this, and not just anyone who steps on the plane is the only benefactor. The city as a whole. And again, I keep saying that we need to invest in ourselves. We need to believe in what we're doing, because the difference between us and the other communities that are successful is that they're seizing those opportunities, and we need to continue looking at those, because again, we need to be a bit different from the city that comes before and after us to show how we'd be able to support this. Again, for the investment, the economic development implications that come from this multiply out many times more. So, these numbers that are showing up here, it doesn't quantify everything else that's happening in the background.
where we're actually on the map and we're being talked about by other cities, other communities, and companies. If we don't have that tool anymore, that's just one less thing we have to go out there and sell Del Rio about. And it just makes it extremely difficult to go out there and try to promote our region, promote our city, and make us different from other small border towns.
And we're getting there, Mr. Eads. Our sales tax are up. Our hotel tax are up. Our building permits are up. But the most important thing that I take a look at on a quarterly basis for our community, our unemployment rate. Our unemployment rate came down from 7.1 to 6.8 at the last meeting I went to. But those are the points that Mr. Eads is trying to make, the economic impact of promoting business and job creation for our citizens. That's what we got to keep an eye on. 6.8 unemployment came down from 7.1. We're a little below the state average. But we need to generate as much business that we can that will employ people, that will spend money. And right now, means of communication and transporting of products and people from point A to point B, that's the American way. That's what we need to focus on our legislative session, and we'll discuss that in a little while also, of having the support from our elected officials to improve our infrastructure in and out of Del Rio, to look at the feasibility of a second bridge, to look at ways to build up the economy in our community. We lost the tourism industry so far, but we need to work on it. But the important thing is we don't get to measure dollar for dollar, because the unemployment rate and the assessed values of the homes that are being purchased by the people that work in those industries helps promote Del Rio, and that's what we got to work on. So, but today, once again, I think that the city and the Economic Development Committee has done a pretty good job of getting our application in. And that's going to get us there. If we're successful, we'll build up that revenue guarantee. But it does not erase the fact that we need individual support from the citizens, whether it be your businesses or, like Councilman Rowland says, he can help out with in-kind through his job. But we also need every individual in Del Rio to say, here's my $20, or here's my $100, or the council, here's our high pay.
Was there a marketing plan submitted as part of the grant application? Did they require a marketing plan? Because there's not an
The
airline.
marketing plan doesn't have to be submitted as part of it, no.
Is there a dollar commitment in terms of what we need to spend as part of the grant in marketing per month or per year?
Yes.
There was?
Yes, there's $100,000 committed to marketing.
Required by the grant or required by what we're putting in there?
What we are placing in the grant application is $100,000 over a 2-year
For 2
period.
That's not a requirement. That's essentially something that we're doing. Okay.
Basically taking the $100,000 that the city is placing in there and allowing the city to market and get the airline in a joint marketing effort with the airline and the surrounding businesses that have offered lots of free advertising and marketing and help and assistance with that.